Thanks, Mel. Appreciate that. Yeah, not satisfied with one Perkins in the commentary box. We've got g'day to Jack and g'day to Larry Perkins, mate. Welcome along. Great to have you here at the Australian Grand Prix as part of our team today here on 10 Sport. Cars from an era where you were right at the very front of Australian touring car racing on track now.
Yes, I was just watching them go past there. One in particular, 77, the old Elf Barbagallo Commodore. It looks great.
This is race 2, Jack, of the Penrite Oils Heritage Touring Cars competition here at the Australian Grand Prix, and Jim Richards, a man that also needs no introduction, starts from pole in the very car that he won a touring car championship in, Terry Lawler alongside. The names might not be familiar, but some of these cars on the grid and the brands and marks are very, very familiar indeed.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly are. These are cars that I mean, when I was growing up at the racetrack watching Dad, I was watching all these cars run around, and a lot of them, like you say, the names aren't the same, but to see Jim Richards out there in a Skyline, that's a pretty famous combination. And, you know, he still punts around pretty good. That Skyline's only about 12 seconds slower than the current V8 supercars, so he's trucking along pretty good. Then we see Mike Roddy, one of the Jaguars. He's pretty famous around Melbourne for a bit of a Jaguar expert. He used to be in our street, didn't he, Dad?
He did indeed. He used to come down by the second-hand brakes office, so maybe his budget levels have improved since then.
That engine in the Jaguar is as big as a dinner table. It is so big, and I imagine it makes a lot of horsepower.
So we should mention that if you haven't seen the Heritage Touring Cars before, as we have a look at perhaps a car that LPU raced once, that's one of the ex-Peter Jansen VH Commodore by the look of it from the Group C era. One of yours, I think?
Very familiar colours. That Peter Jansen Schweppes car there, that was first car I raced at Bathurst. Was in, if that was the 77 model, that was my first entry to Bathurst.
What's the story? Isn't the story the Schweppes and Cherry Ripe sponsorship on the warm-up lap? Peter Jansen stopped on the side of the road or something? Tell us that one.
Well, we did the warm-up lap. In those days, the co-driver went in the car as well, and he's busy driving off the road to the crowd, throwing Cherry Ripes out the window. I got so angry at him, I grabbed the steering wheel because we were on our race tyres, and he wasn't very conscious of the potential of punches.
How's that? I mean, you're doing a warm-up lap, and you've got both drivers in the car. We just saw Eric Banner and Mark Webber in that Porsche together. I mean, being in the passenger seat's not a great feeling as a driver.
There's an expectation for you when you rock up with James Courtney in Bathurst this year, Jack Perkins. I think passenger seat, car 22, out the window.
Monster cans.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
Right. Very.
I'll do the warm-up lap with James and see if the crowd feel like a can of Monster in the morning.
If you haven't seen the Heritage Touring Cars before, this is an amazing category that's just exploded in interest over the last 5 or 6 years. These are the original racing cars that competed from the early days of Group C, so 73, 74, so you get the A9X Tiranas and the L34s, right up through to the end of Group A, which was 1992, and right up to the amazing GIO Nissan Skyline, Godzilla, as it became famous for. An amazing era of Australian motorsport, LP.
I saw another familiar car into my little world there, number 17, the green Dick Johnson car. That's one day when I had a brain snap and drove a Ford at Bathurst, 1985.
I was going to ask that because I grew up in a very, very red family, the Holden family, and I was devastated when I found out that you drove something from the Blue Oval product. I was glad you came to your senses and came back and won a few more in the GM.
No, it was a little diversion in my life, but Dick prepared a good couple of cars there, and we went on and had a good time there.
So Jim Richards from pole position in this one. That's the car that won the 1990 Australian Touring Car Championship. Racing car drivers, some of them at least, get fond of their old cars, and Jim's buying back a lot of them. He's also got one of the JPS, the Frank Gardner prepared BMW M3s that he raced in his workshop here in Melbourne. So he's back in the car that he won a championship with. Alongside him, Terry Lawler in the R32 Godzilla, the GIO car.
These are pretty cool cars. Like you say, Jim Richards loves all his old cars, and he gets any opportunity to jump in one of the old cars, he does it. Rolling start here. They are looking after these older clutches these days, and they have a rolling start for the guys. We see Jim left of screen. He'll be looking to get that Skyline wound up when the green flag drops.
And watch for the V8, the Walkinshaw, the VL Commodore just behind David Holt behind the wheel, has been at the front of this category for a long time. And then the RS500 Ford Sierras, one of the ex-Colin Bond cars in there, driven by Markland. Bill Pye is in this field as well. He's driving that ex-Dick Johnson Ford Mustang, the Group A car from 85 and 86.
They're a lot more ginger into turn one, these boys. They're definitely a lot of them are gentlemen racers looking after their machinery, unlike the V8 supercar race yesterday where none of those boys really look after the doors at all.
I might add, it might be because they own them.
They're not paying the bills like back in the day, perhaps. There's the STP Roadways Group C Commodore, driven by Ed Singleton, who really is the man who's tied this category all together over the last few seasons.
It's a great mix of cars, isn't it? I remember that STP car, Gricey. That was pretty cool in its day, a cool sponsor, and they used to look the part. I remember that STP sneakers, I think.
So as the Group A cars continue to work through the Heritage Touring Car field, Mark Howard's been finding the drivers as they arrive at Albert Park, and he's found McLaren's Jensen Button.
Jensen, great to see you back in Australia. The sun is shining. It's a new day, I guess.
Yeah, it is, and it's a warm day, which is nice. Hope everyone's got their suntan lotion on out there.
There you go. It's a nice community service announcement by you. There's been some problems with the car, but when it's up and running, you seem reasonably positive with it.
Yeah, the feeling's good, but there's still a lot of work to do before we're properly competitive, and I don't think that will be this weekend. But you know, we're out there to get the maximum out of what we have and to improve every time we're out on the circuit, and so that's our aim, and we'll see what we get up to in the race. It's going to be a tricky one for us, but we'll do our best.
That's quite a moustache.
I'm trying, yeah. It's very blonde, or some would say ginger, but
Push on.
I'm trying, exactly.
I tell you what, only Mark Howard would ask Jensen Button about his moustache. That is only a Mark Howard question.
Jensen
I
Button,
love it. That's great.
He loves asking all the tough questions, doesn't he? But we're watching on these old cars. There's definitely a bit of a mix here. That Mustang was 1985, I think, Dad. I was born a year after that, so I can't quite remember it.
Yeah, that's a good reason not to remember it. Yeah, it was 1985, and I only did the one. I did the Sandown and Bathurst of that year with Dick Johnson. As I say, that was after I had a bit of a hiccup with the Brocky cam.
Now we see here these two Nissans up the front are a slightly different vintage. The HR31 that Jim's in is a bit different to the GIO Nissan. That's the old car that I think Mark Gibbs and Rowan Onslow drove back very much when I was a lot younger. But what was it like racing against these Nissans, Dad, when you were in a rear-wheel drive VL Commodore?
I'd hardly call it racing, because it's like racing a push bike against a motorbike. And it was not hard to work out who was going to win. But if I do remember, I think it was 1992, Jim and Scafie made a lot of friends at the end of Bathurst that time.
Which James Moffat this year got up on the podium and called the crowd a lovely, nice bunch of people instead of the words that Jim used at the time.
I thought that was an excellent comeback too. Here's another one of your old cars, Larry, the 77 VL Commodore, the VL Group A. Real last of the real homologation specials, I guess, at the end of Group A, and that's a car that you drove over in WA with Alf Barbagallo, I think.
Yes, that was owned by a really great bloke, Alf Barbagallo, true privateer, great supporter of the category over there. And I remember, he loved his racing. He's driving home from the track one day when I was there with his brand new Ferrari. The crowd's on the street is waving at him, and he's waving back because he's loved all that. They kept waving until his pants got a bit hot. He realised his brand new Ferrari was on fire.
I must admit, I remember when we were young, you used to always make the venture over to Perth for the Wanneroo 300. Now the track's named after Alf, but isn't there a story where he went racing on the warm-up lap?
Yes, Alf was a character, and he didn't race. He was not a professional racer, as we'll know. We started on the warm-up lap, and he's flat, and he's gone for it. And everyone else was pulling up on the line. He's going for it. He was quite embarrassed, but it was a bit of a laugh, that's for sure.
Larry, Jack, last week I know drove the car that you won Bathurst in 97 in the VS Commodore. Must be cool to see your boy racing one of your old cars that you had great success in.
Well, it's something I'd never, you don't think about at the time, but yes, it was cool to see the car that was in our shop for a service from Dave Gardner, who now owns it, and yeah, it brings back a bit of memories. I'm not as enthusiastically challenged as these guys are, but it's so great to see all this stuff, yeah.
It's amazing the preservation that goes into them too, and there's industries created around looking after and preparing these old cars as well, boys.
Yeah, and that car of Dave Gardner's is the Black VN, the Alf Barbagallo car. I drove that last year. It's actually got a 5-speed gearbox in it, which in my era has all been 6-speed, and the 5-speed's quite interesting because first gear is down where second normally is, and reversed is where first is. So you've got to get your head around what gear you're in and where you're actually trying to go in the gearbox. It's quite fun to drive, though.
I hope you didn't damage the gearbox.
No, nor the engine. I definitely got it all right, that's for sure.
So Jim Richards continues to lead this 8-lap race. We're on lap 3, but Terry Lawler really keeping him honest. Terry's a very experienced privateer racer, I guess you can call him, racing in historic touring car racing for quite some time. David Hulk in third in the VL Walkinshaw. Brian Sala is up a couple of spots from where he started yesterday. He's in the RS500 Ford Sierra. Those cars were amazing. That's one of the ex-Tony Longhurst cars around the 88, 89 era. Of course, got a Bathurst victory there with Thomas Mazzera.
I like the look of the VR Walkinshaws. I mean, to me, that's a great-looking race car. The Batmobile, as the road car was known.
We're working our way through the Penrite Heritage Touring Cars. We're going to take a break from Albert Park. We'll come back with the conclusion of this race and more F1 arrivals here on 10. We're in the middle of one of those really cool moments in motorsport here at Albert Park as 10's coverage of the Formula One Rolex Australian GP continues throughout the day. The Penrite Heritage Touring Cars are on track. We're watching two Nissans of different vintages from the early 1990s battling on, and we've got a legend of the sport in the commentary box. Larry Perkins joining myself and Jack Perkins here as we watch a change of the lead with Terry Lawler going past Jim Richards in the two different Nissans, dicing at the front of this amazing field which encompasses cars from Group C right through to the later days of Group A in 1992. LP, it must be cool to see these cars race, but what were your impressions on racing with some of the GTRs and the Sierras especially, which was so strong in the late 1980s?
Well, it was an era that was an international era, you know, and my biggest impression was looking at the back of a Nissan four-wheel drive, and we weren't always that happy about that, but every now and again I did reverse that, but not often enough.
Should mention, Jack, that Fred Gibson heavily involved in the preparation and running of all of these cars still. So run a lot of them in the day, and Gibson Motorsport continues to run with he and Alan Heafy looking after and preparing a lot of these cars.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Terry Lawler pass Jim Richards for the lead, and we were talking in the ad break, like on the rare occasion you got in front of the Skyline, Dad, how did you keep it behind you?
Drove very wildly, and they weren't game to pass.
We touched on before the ad break, there's another VR Walkinshaw there. That was a car that I think Russell Ingall made his debut at Bathurst in a long time ago.
94.
But I like the look of those VR Walkinshaws. And Dad, you had a bit to play with Tom in the early days of HSV and HRT.
Yes, that very first year, I think I might have prepared the cars under their banner and went up there. But the Batmobile, as they were called, but they were a unique thing and very much sought after now by enthusiasts.
And dicing here with Brian Sala. He's in the number 5 Ford Sierra, and David Holt just has a bit of a moment out of turn 2 in the Walkinshaw. So this was what it was like back in the day. The 5-litre Holden-powered Commodore dicing with the turbocharged Ford Sierra, and those things were just rocket ships back in the day.
They were. And Brian Sala, if my memory serves me correctly, he was one of the youngest ever to race at Bathurst. And I think myself and Shane Price took the record off him for having the youngest combined age.
Yeah, okay.
So Brian's still racing there in the Sierras, and they, yeah, like I said, they were racing back in 1990. I vividly remember watching that on the old tape player back in the day.
So 3 laps to go in this race. Lawler and Richards having a really entertaining battle out in front, but there's battling right through the field. Got a few messages on Twitter. There's a couple of guys. There's an XD Falcon and one of the ex-Colin Bond Alfa Romeo GTVs apparently having a massive battle. So cars from different eras. The little 1985 GTV having a scrap.
Here we go. Is this Peter Jansen behind the wheel, Dad?
Well, if it was the other driver, it'd be getting well out of the road, I think, by now.
I think it's Milton Safiris. He's wheeled that thing pretty good. He's moved up inside the top 12, and he's doing a good job. But look, we're here at the Formula One Grand Prix, and it's well worth talking about that, Dad, because you're lucky enough to race in 76, 77, and you're still a pretty big follower of the sport.
Yes, look, I'm looking at Peter Jansen's car now. He was a great unrecognised... he was better than he's remembered for. He was fantastic as a co-driver, or I was his co-driver, I should say. Had a great time. And he introduced me to this touring car racing in Australia.
What are your thoughts on Formula One at the moment, LP? I know you're a Daniel Ricciardo fan. He's been so good for the sport, hasn't he?
Oh, fantastic. Well, and I tell you, he's earned it. His drives last year were just superb, absolutely superb. His car control and his bravado behind the wheel's fantastic. So, yeah, we're all wanting him to do well today. A bit of a setback with his engine problems yesterday, but he'll get over that.
You still follow the sport closely and follow its progress?
I always watch the TV. Don't you worry about that. I don't, if you like, go to the races as such than here, but when you walk into this paddock here at the Grand Prix Melbourne, the wow factor is as high, it's always higher than the year before. Fantastic to see.
And you've still got a couple of friends in the paddock. Have you caught up with Bernie yet this weekend?
Well, Bernie used to be on the friend list when I drove for him. That's many, many years ago, and I've forgotten that life. But a lot of the guys, it's a small world. You're familiar faces all around you.
Just see one of the Mazda RX-7's massively controversial car back in the early 1980s. That's the Takiko Racing Mazda, driven by Chris Bowden of the Bowden family, who have done such an amazing job preserving the heritage of a lot of these cars in their Queensland base. Incredible operation and an amazing fleet of racing cars they've got. Actually heard from Brian Nightingale, a Bathurst local who raced that car back in the 80s, in the 1980s in the Australian Endurance Championship, and had a couple of really good results, and he was really happy to see that car on track. There's Sebastian Vettel, four-time world champion. Jackie Stewart chatting with Nico Rosberg.
You know Jackie Stewart, don't you, Dad?
Yes, I've known him way back in those days, and I saw young Nico Rosberg, his old man Keke was a very good friend of mine. We raced together many times in the 70s and 80s.
We see a change for the lead here. Jim Richards has pegged one back on Terry Lawler there. This is the skyline battle of all battles.
This is good stuff too.
I'm sure the Nissan people will be watching this hoping this is what's going to happen in the V8 Supercar race later today, but there's no turbos on those Altimas.
We should remember that Jim is still racing quite regularly, not only in Targa Tasmania, where he's been racing a Porsche there for many years and still the most successful driver in that, but he's racing and winning championships in the Touring Car Masters Series, so even older cars than these. Was on the podium at the Clipsal 500 in his old, or brand new, AMC Javelin, which is an amazing car. This is a great fight as they start the final lap. The Heritage Touring Cars here at Albert Park. One of two races we'll bring you over the course of the weekend from its amazing look back over the years. Now, who's this arriving in what looks to be a lovely car? Mark Howard has more news.
Well, that is a beautiful car there. You can see it. That is the car the world champion Lewis Hamilton arrives in. It's got quite a chain on today. Mind if we grab you for a quick chat as you sign, Lewis, if you don't mind? How are you this morning? Positive day yesterday?
Got to move out of the way, guys.
Thank you very much, Lewis.
Positive day yesterday, Lewis?
It was okay. It wasn't too bad.
Back up, media.
How are you feeling looking forward to qualifying today? Sorry, mate.
Moving.
How are you feeling looking forward to qualifying today?
Guys, back up a little bit, please.
Honestly, I'm excited. I think it's gonna be a difficult day for sure, but so I can't do two things at once.
No, you go and do your thing, mate. There is Lewis Hamilton. I think we're going back to you and Crailsey and Jack and Larry. I don't think you used to roll with a chain like that, Larry, when you were driving, but I like it. But one question for you without notice, Larry, one of the hard men of Australian motorsport. How do you feel about the fact your son shaves his legs?
I wish I didn't know about that.
Hey, look, my question was going to be when you rocked up to a Grand Prix in 76 or 77, did you have the chain and were in the backseat of a Mercedes coupe?
I mostly rocked up on a push bike, I think, you know. But that's a little bit different to the way I used to do it, for sure. I'm not sure whether I was jealous or not of that chain.
How's Howie? He loves it, doesn't he? Yeah. He will do anything he can to extract a comment or two from...
It's only Saturday, Howie. Payback is always good, but we're approaching the last couple of corners here, and these two Nissans have put together a great race, and it'll be interesting to see if Terry Lawler can get it done here.
Well, Jim Richards took the first race yesterday morning. I wonder if Lawler will return serve this time around. Out of the final corner, it's been an entertaining battle the whole way through. A bit of smoke and haze up in front from some ailing cars, but the checkered flag out. And the 92 Godzilla wins at Albert Park. A great victory for Lawler. Defeats Jim Richards. Really entertaining battle between the two of them. And third place will be David Hulk in the GIO Walkinshaw. So one for the Holden fans there, LP. Still very competitive, even, what, 30 years after it made its debut.
Well, it's competitive, but I'm not sure with who, but no, it's great to see it, though. The enthusiasm of here, especially these owners, fantastic to see.
And that's Dave Gardner there. Great support of Australian motorsport. Good to see him still got the Perkins and Barbagallo on the window.
My thanks go to Jack, of course. LP, thanks for dropping in. We've really appreciated your feedback. Enjoy the rest of the weekend, mate.
Thank you.
There's Larry Perkins. Great to have him in the commentary box here on 10.